You are listening to the Group Therapy Podcast presented by HeroOptic.com, your destination for all things shooting, hunting, and outdoors.
Time for group therapy, boys.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Group Therapy. Today in the studio we are joined by Jason Bainey along with a couple guys from Nightforce. If you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves as we get in, we all know Bainey, of course. Let's start with you, Sean.
So Sean Murphy, I'm the training manager at the company. I've been around since 2011, done some sales stuff, some marketing stuff in the last, 4 or 5 years doing the training, traveling around, helping people sell them and shoot them.
All right, excellent. And you, Drew?
Mm-hmm. I'm Drew Wiedenhop. I'm the national sales manager here in the United States. I've worked with the Euro Optic account for several years. Since I started with Nightforce in 2014, I've been a regular guy, I've been a key account type guy, and now national sales manager.
We're happy to have you as our guy, that's for sure. So, Sean, you actually, you're a fairly accomplished precision shooter, right? I mean, I've seen you getting lots of awards on the social media. What have you done there?
I do get around, shoot a few different matches. Last couple of years, been doing a lot of team stuff. Partner Greg, he actually works at Proof Research.
Okay.
We kind of fell into that. I've had a lot of success on the team stuff, but also like to shoot, solo events on the precision rifle side. Do some other stuff with carbines and pistols, and basically, if it goes bang and it's not a shotgun, I'm pretty interested in it.
2 of the 3 guns, I guess.
Yeah, shotguns are fun, but they're just I like the rifles and pistols a little
only
bit more.
accurate rifles / pistols are interesting. I'm with you there. I'm not super into shotguns, but they're fun where you need them.
Yep.
Very cool. Now, Nightforce has been around for quite a while, most of my life. Could you go into kind of the company history, the background, the corporate structure, how it all lays out worldwide?
Sure. So we are, a little bit over 30 years. So 1992 is when the company was officially founded. Founded by a gentleman, Dr. Ray Dennis. He's still our owner. He's still involved in the business. He's the sole owner. We're not corporate owned. We're not, anything like that. And
the biggest dentist you'll ever meet.
Yes. Actually, our company kind of started out of somewhat of a necessity and fulfilling a need. He actually started our sister company called Nightforce. That actually started as a hunting light company. Him being an Australian, put his way through dental school and other interests of hunting at night for pelts, foxes, things like that, selling that and being very resourceful. And so this is, over 30 years ago. So you can imagine what lights were like and scopes were like back then. And started kind of building his own lights. People started liking them, so he started the lighting company. After that, then the scopes needed to be addressed, and that's kind of where the first iterations of some kind of scope come about, and started the company in the United States. At the time, the name Nightforce was owned by another company from a U.S. perspective, so changed the name to Nightforce. That's kind of how we got started.
Yeah, not night vision, anything just yet, but certainly usable.
Now, the first scope was at that 5.5 to 22 varmeter. That was?
Yeah, and kind of what's now the Benchrest, but it kind of looked a lot like that. Yeah, the varmeter series, and there's still some out there still going strong. And started with that. Based out of North Idaho, so the town of Orofino.
So that is the actual.
Yeah, that's headquarters.
That is the headquarters for Nightforce as the brand.
Yep. So the Fancy Ourselves in Idaho company. Drew and I are actually based out of the southeast. About 2010-ish, started a sales office down there, and that's kind of how we came into the business. And as we've grown, when I started, we were less than 100 employees, and now we're knocking the door on 200 and spread across that North Idaho. We've got some folks down in Boise, some marketing engineering kind of expansion happening there. We're out of the southeast sales-wise, although we're as we keep growing, we're just expanding that footprint, and we still, with our owner's Australian connection, have some folks down in Australia as well. So truly a global company, but primarily U.S.-based and really Idaho-centric for the vast majority of our operations and things that we do.
Because U.S. is the biggest market.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the Georgia is more just handling dealer transactions?
Sales,
that,
yeah.
that type of stuff?
Over the years, we've had some marketing in and out. We've had some different sales components, but being kind of in the post-COVID world, we've been a little more remote and really traveling. Being able to come up here and do stuff, and not as locked down in a fixed building. Get out. That's where kind of my jobs come into play, and a couple other guys that work with me is we're trying to be more engaged get out to the customers and support them. It's premium products, we're trying to give them the premium service, and a lot of that's going to the customer or going to where the end users are at. And
right.
So, yeah.
No, it's very valuable for sure. So then Idaho is more the nuts and bolts. That's where they're
engineering,
assembling and testing and
production, machine shop, various other activities. We have some marketing stuff out of there, our admin and our finance, all the stuff that you need to run a business also happens out of there. So very, the vast majority of the essential functions of the company are there. So,
Gotcha. So I guess, can you go into the U.S. facility a little more? Like, what all do you guys do at the Idaho plant?
Well, we've production being a big component to that. That's probably where most of the space is allocated. We do have a machine shop, make our own stuff. We also have other key partners around to make stuff for us as well. But so that is its own kind of resourcing operations part, materials management, things like that. Whether we do it or get it in and test it ourselves, to the production side. So whether it's inspecting them all the way into assemblies, sub-assemblies, whatever. The different products have different amounts of work, so to speak, that go into them, and so a lot of that or all of that happens up in there. And then engineering, R&D, whether it's new, next generation future stuff to revisiting existing products and how can we do it better, how can we make it more efficient or make things just nicer, last longer, whatever that happens to be. Customer services out of there, so they have a connection where, if need be, they can run down to production and check something out, or vice versa. If it's something that may have popped up as a customer service concern, they can address it right away. And then, admin,
very
finance,
agile
HR.
on that aspect. Yep. And what I know you guys have, there's been a lot of videos around about some of the crazy testing that you guys are doing in there. Like what kind of testing do these undergo at that facility?
So we do a lot. Testing, the QC process, a lot of people think of it as just the end of the road. Okay, now it's put together, let's make sure it works. But testing happens all throughout, and really the quality comes from that engineering side that's there, to the material side, to the quality of the metals and the machine operations or the hand finishing. On the turrets, they have a lot of hand burnishings, putting that turret together to make it essentially perfect. Then, so that'll get tested before it goes into a scope, or the erector system gets tested before it goes in the scope. So we don't put it all together and figure out, this isn't right.
Right.
And then ultimately at the end is really what people see, or what we kind of showcase, with the highlight of that being the impact test. So we'll check tracking, we'll check to make sure everything works as it should, it's backlash free, it feels right. But then we'll actually basically beat the scope trying to break it. Can we get it to lens shift, or have the turret not track, or debris show up, so that we don't want the customer to be our QC department. We're going to test these things because we don't have the luxury of knowing, this scope could go out to a police officer that's going to qualify with it and take it on duty, or there's some high-level competitive shooter is going to take it to a match and lay it on the line, significant financial investment, or just the pride on the line, to a hunter that might have the elk hunt of a lifetime, or might be flying to somewhere like a Tajikistan where you can't fix that on the fly. So we don't have the luxury of knowing
guys don't always have backups, so
exactly. We don't have the luxury
of
knowing where it's going or how it's going to be used. So we want it to work as it should, out of the box every time.
Something that's cropped up that just made me think of, but guys will get a scope and there'll be some little piece of debris in the field. Like I had an 8-32 NXS years ago. I had a little debris in the one quadrant. That doesn't bother me because I know it happens in everything. None of the scopes, no matter if they're $100 or $10,000, none of them are immune to having some debris show up once in a while. And as much as for my own stuff, I just like to take it and beat it off of a phone book and clear that piece of debris. It happens. I mean, it fixes it quite often. People are very averse to actually doing that, but probably that shock is not anywhere near what you guys are subjecting them to. So hopefully
Yeah, well,
It's
people can, an approximate 1,200 Gs or so.
Yeah,
you can imagine that's significant forward and stop. The forward impact, where it's obviously kind of your recoil simulation, but
that's
where
your main vector,
we do different is kind of on the sides and the top, and so that's where your abuse or stuff happens. The sling breaks on your gun hits the ground or gets knocked off the bench of the shooting range, or worse. In a military environment, the truck gets blown up or something falls off a pallet or, whatever gets run over. Weird stuff happens. We have all kinds of crazy customer service stories of you'll never believe what happened. And it didn't just keep working. It held zero, or this thing literally got blown up and it's within a half a minute, or kind of thing.
Just like that old NXS with the bullet hole through it that the guy was still using.
Exactly. So we do a lot of work and a lot of testing to make sure they work. That you want to trust it. You want to be able to count on it when you need it.
Awesome. Drew, anything else to add to that part before we move on to what we're looking at here?
No, Sean's really good at covering this stuff.
All right.
Not leaving a lot of holes.
I think he can do that in his sleep.
Yeah.
So, Drew, can you kind of give us a rundown? I always like to look at things linearly, so maybe start at the bottom budget-wise and go all the way up to the top. And we've got most of them here, which we'll talk about a little bit, but if you're listening on just the podcast, you won't see them, but there's a lot of hardware on the table. So starting at the SHV, if you could fill us in on all of the different scope lines.
Sure. We'll talk about the scopes that we have here, which are the core of our product line, and where if you look on the website for Euro Optic, you're looking around. These are probably the ones that you'll probably land on because they serve most of our customers for most of their purposes. We do have some specialized ones that stand outside of this, specifically from competitive use, where if you're specializing in a sport, you might go look for that. Right. But otherwise, you'll spend your time looking at our SHV line, which is a direct descendant of a heritage of the NXS, just in a more affordable version. We wanted to be able to offer Nightforce durability and reliability in a package that made it more accessible to folks, whether that was, this is the first real gun that I bought. I bought my first Seekins precision rifle. I'm going to go hunt with it. I want to target shoot a little bit, and I don't want to blow the budget.
Right.
The SHV is probably your man. Excuse me. It's also for the guy who has one of our higher end scopes and maybe wants a trainer scope for his kid, his dad, something like that, or it's just the appropriate choice for the situation. So if you're sticking in the $985 to $1,345 budget, we've got a 3 to 10, some 4 to 14s, and a 5 to 20 that can do every bit as much as the bigger scopes in terms of its capability and durability, just without the extra features that bring the cost up for the both of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're all illuminated. First focal and second focal option.
We only have one first focal plane option. It's the 4 to 14 by 50, and the others are second focal plane option. The 5 to 20 and the 4 to 14 by 50 F1. Side note, if you see F1 on a product listing from Nightforce, that means it's first focal plane. Those are the only two that have the zero set elevation adjustment, which you can see on the 5 to 20 that we've got here on the table. The idea is it gives you a return to zero feature that's perfectly accurate, completely capable, very accessible. If you want something that's got more capability, you might look into our NX8 family, which is the other side of that traditional NXS legacy design. We had the NXS around for a very long time. It's about 20 years old at this point.
And the NXS is still available,
correct.
But it's
reduced options.
Right.
Quite as many.
Not a million reticles like there used to be. And
it's getting close to retirement. I mean,
I don't want to gloss over the 2.5 to 10 by 42. That's one of my all-time favorites because it can serve anything from inside your house to 1,000 yards. I run one on a little 5-pound Barrett Fieldcraft, and
that's a great pairing.
I've
hunted with a combo exactly that setup, and it's awesome.
I've run that thing to 1,000 yards with the 6.5 Creed and that little barrel and that little scope, and 2/3 dipstick is in trouble most of the time.
Yeah.
So
well, it's the 2.5 to 10 by 42 is interesting because it has big scope features in a very small package. So
that's why I like it.
Especially somebody who's familiar with precision rifle scopes and dialing and everything that you'd want to do for long range, it's completely doable in a very compact, reasonably affordable package for what it is.
Yeah. So the NXS was what started all this. I know 20 years ago is when I got my first one.
Yeah, 99, 2000 is when they were introduced. And when I started in 2011, it was our product line. We had that and a couple Benchrest models, but that was the core of us for over 12 years at that point. And it really did build our brand, build our name of that ultra durable.
Right. Yeah.
to
If someone
hell and
had a
back
50 cal,
reliability.
that's pretty much what everyone was putting on it 20 years ago was an NXS.
Yep. And we did, videos. I was in some of them where we shot them and we beat them and we threw them
Yep.
and we beat nails in logs. And I mean, they're incredibly tough. But at this point, it's a 20-year-old product, and so that's where we've kind of moved into that NX8. But that being said, what's fun, sometimes going to some of the shows with like you guys and things like that. I got 30 NXSs. I got 50 5.5 to 22s because to them it's their known standard. It's their Glock 19 of scopes. It's like, you know what? It works every time. I'm comfortable with it. I bought a new rifle. I put an NXS on it.
Yeah, it's very much a frame of reference for our entire brand and our customers, so they know what to expect.
I'm glad you still have it around, especially that little guy.
Yeah. Well, it's been very important for us building our company, but also maintaining that, because if we're going to ask a customer to take a look at an NX8, which is the next generation, if you will, of that, we want them to have the same confidence that they had in our NXS in this new product, even though it's a different shape and there's some different features to it. We think that there's a compelling case to be made for why you would choose an NX8 over an NXS these days.
Right.
What this family gets you, a 1-8, a 2.5 to 20 by 50, or a 4 to 32 by 50, is, compelling is the right word. The NX8 1-8 is a first focal plane scope that is smaller than the NXS 1-4 was. If you've ever held one of those, you know the size frame there.
Yep.
It's super capable for small, very
that's
compact
what,
guns.
right at
where
9
size
inches,
is a
9 inches long?
priority.
Just under, yep.
If you want to add something to augment your shooting experience, like you've got a thermal to go in front of it, so you've got limited rail space, it's a great choice. If you want
Gives you as much real estate as possible.
Yeah, if you want to increase the capacity of a gun but keep it small, you've got an SBR, and I might want to zoom in and shoot 300, 400, 500 yards with it. The NX8 1-8 is going to be a great choice. They start about $1,750. We've got mill and MOA options, capped elevation, zero stop elevation versions. There's a lot of different options that are available.
And then in the bigger brothers of the NX8, you've got first and second focal plane as well there too.
Yep. Our 2.5 to 20 by 50 is very similar in size to the 2.5 to 10 by 42 that you like so much. It weighs a couple ounces more, but it's still reasonably svelte at 28 ounces relative to precision rifle scopes.
It's just over a foot long, I believe.
So super capable in a very small package, first or second focal plane options, minute and mill options. At the moment, we have dark earth mill options with a mill XT and the Tremor 3 reticle. So it is super capable for somebody who has a do-all gun, whether it's a DMR type rifle, competitive gas gun, a hunting rifle that you want to use very flexibly. It can do a whole lot of stuff.
Right. And that was front and center on our very first podcast, or second. No, that was the first podcast, because that was the one that we were maybe never going to publish when we did the do-all scopes. So we had the NX8 was right square in that video as well.
Yeah, that was the overall.
The best all-around scope
do anything.
deal. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, I think you go back to our old NXS again, but the 3.5 to 15 was always considered of one scope to do anything.
Yep.
But now with these, you have a 2.5 to 20, so we're actually smaller scope,
Smaller, lighter,
a couple ounces lighter,
and
but
more
you
on each
actually have
end.
more mag range, similar elevation travel. Kind of the updated turrets, the digital illumination. I mean, the NX8 family at large was okay. We have this NX8; it's awesome, and we haven't talked about the ATACRs yet. Let's kind of take what we've learned and combine them. And what is that next generation NXS? That the NXS was our kind of do everything scope family, and that's living on in these. And the 2.5 to 20, I think, really embodies that. I can really put it on any gun and do anything with it.
Right.
Same thing with the 4 to 32. I think, is that still probably your most popular version in general?
It's an interesting debate when you're talking to folks about which one you would want between the 2.5 to 20
1
and the
inch
4 to
difference
32.
and 1 ounce, right?
Yep.
Yeah. They're super close in terms of overall dimension. And some folks just like the idea of putting the 2.5 to 20 on their gun because it doesn't feel like a big scope.
Right.
But you get a lot more magnification in a 4 to 32 in a package that's basically the same size as an NXS 5.5 to 22.
Yep.
You're not compromising that much on weight, and you can see into the future. It's so much magnification, right? But you don't have to use it because you can start at full power.
Exactly. You don't need it. If you can't use it if you don't have it.
Yeah.
Well, and even internally here, and I think the guns were in the rimfire trainer video as well. But Kiefer and I have both decided on opposing ends. I run the 4 to 32 on a Trainer 22, and then he runs the 2.5 to 20s on his and his boys.
Yeah,
so
my rough rule of thumb, kind of picking between the two, is if on the gun you're going to be a lot of 6, 8, 10, 12 power, the 2.5 to 20 is about perfect. Yeah. It's a little bit smaller. The field of view is pretty close, but it's just a good all-around option there. And sometimes you might go a little bit lower or a little bit higher. But if you like that 12 to 20, which is where a lot of precision rifle, positional shooting, field of view, scanning wide, things like that comes into play. I think the 4 to 32, you have, I think it's a little bit easier to stay behind at those higher magnifications, and then you have that ability to zoom in from a target ID or zeroing low development. Sometimes you want that quasi target scope that has 30x on it for shooting just those perfect little bug holes at 100, 200 yards.
I like this for ARs specifically, guys that are going to stretch out ARs. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Yep. If you don't want to go up to like the 4 to 16 or 4 to 20.
Exactly. Yeah, and these are only, $1950, $2150 for kind of that base first focal plane, plus or minus options and reticles. But
yeah, definitely one of the best. I mean, still like that first podcast, still one of the best all around options out there, considering everything. That pretty much wraps up the NX8s. You ready to go to the ATACRs?
Yeah.
ATACRs, ACTARs.
ATACR,
people like to call them ACTARs.
Tactical Rifle Scope.
Yeah, I think we should get it once and for all from Nightforce themselves to pronounce it so that everyone can just stop the debate.
You got to be careful.
I know they like it ATACR.
These Nightforce guys.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's an acronym for Advanced Tactical Rifle Scope.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was 2013 when we came out with it.
Yeah.
I like to
it's morphed into ATACR for sure.
If you're paying for it, call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
There you go. Problem solved. So in the ATACR line, we do have a lot of options. We've got a 1 to 8, 4 to 16 by 42, 4 to 16 by 50, 4 to 20 by 50, 5 to 25 by 56, and 7 to 35 by 56. Many of them offering first and second focal, some of them just offering first or second focal. That's something to sort out when you get really narrowed in on which magnification feels right to you. But broadly speaking, it is the pinnacle of rifle scope technology that we have to offer. It came from a desire to have better optical performance, better feature sets, especially compared to the NXS, because it came out before the NX8 did, so that it has gobs of elevation adjustment, big tactile adjustments that are easy to use, very user-friendly features like power throw levers. This is one of the first places we began to integrate these. We have covered windage adjustments that are waterproof without the cover, so you can use it electively. Other things like that, including digital illumination. That was the first place we did that, with the idea that if we could have a dream rifle scope, what would it look like? And it's become the ATACR family. I think a lot of customers agree with us. It very quickly became one of our best-selling scopes. A lot of military customers like it. I believe the line is that every member of the ATACR family is in service with the military somewhere in the world, mostly elite service folks. But we've been very appreciative of the confidence that they've put in our product to be able to use it for some of the more dangerous jobs in the world. And so we're glad to be able to offer it. It does come with a price tag. The price is going to be, whereas the NX8 maxed out around $2,300, $2,400, these start about $2,400 and go up to about $4,000. Some of that's going to be based on the color that you choose or the reticle. If it's got a Horus reticle, there's a surcharge involved in that, things like that. But when you're investing like that, you're going to get peak performance as well.
Right. Now, can you just touch on maybe the Mark 22 SOCOM deal and what that involved?
Sure. So the background of the Mark 22, the Barrett Mark 22 that you see from a couple of places, it's on your website in a full package or just as a standalone rifle. But there are a couple of them where we have offered an ATACR 7 to 35 that comes direct through Barrett and then to dealers like you guys, so that you can have a clone of the actual PVPS scope that we offered to SOCOM.
Which was the 7 to 35.
Correct. So background on that, and there's not a whole lot you can Google about it, but SOCOM did a refresh on a lot of their equipment, and the precision variable power scope was something that they awarded a contract for, and they awarded both our 5 to 25 and our 7 to 35 in a very specific configuration that's not otherwise offered on the commercial market. So when you go look up the Mark 22 on the website, you will see a dark earth ATACR 7 to 35 that looks a little bit different.
With that odd little nub on top.
Yes. So number one is folks like to think it's a beast. There's a misconception there. It's got the 360 brake that came off
beast brake.
Yeah, the I4F elevation adjustment that was on the beast. So it's a slimmed down version. It also is non-illuminated. Comes with a Tremor 3 reticle, just like the SOCOM version does, and it has comparable engraving to what SOCOM has on theirs. The other part for the Mark 22 itself is it's got the same ultra mount that we offer on the commercial market, just with a slightly different engraving relative to the contract.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah.
So then you said the 5 to 25 was in service.
It was
on the
also
SOCOM deal as
selected,
well.
correct.
Yep.
And then you've got the 4 to 20 in something.
Mm-hmm.
So
that program was called RVPS, or Ranging Variable Power Scope. So it's a 4 to 20 by 50, just like the commercial version, but again, dark earth, Tremor 3, non-illuminated, and with the 360 brake.
And then the 1 to 8 as well for SVPS, which was Squad Variable Power Scope. And that one had a locking illumination and then a different reticle. There was more BDC
Locking
based.
illumination. Interesting.
Yeah, BDC based for their ammunition. So it had a few features very specific to what they were looking at on that. So those are kind of the big three of current SOCOM programs. Like Drew said, with a few subtle varieties that were spelled out very specifically in the contract. But we do offer versions thereof. Last year we brought out the dark earth color. That was a very popular request from some customers, and so now we offer it.
Very cool. Well, it's good to see they are well trusted. Obviously, you already knew that, but nice to kind of lay that out there for everybody, because there's a lot of chatter about it, but getting straight facts is kind of tough on that.
Yeah. Well, by nature, those guys are kind of secretive.
Yeah,
like to keep it kind of quiet, but I mean, nothing. We haven't shared
Comfortable
anything
feeling.
that's not public. You can dig deep enough, you can find information on it. But
that we did skip something I kind of wanted to go into. I know since I've been a Nightforce user for 21 years. I noticed some of them in our talking before. Some of the scopes have more kind of U.S. content or U.S. contact, let's say. And I know the 2.5 to 10 NXS was one of them. And then some of the attackers. Can you go into that? Just kind of which ones are you handling more or doing more in the U.S. facility?
Sure. With the ATACR family, that's where you'll see the most of it.
Right.
The 5 to 25 F1, the 4 to 20 by 50 F1, the 4 to 16 by 50, which is a second focal plane scope, the 4 to 16 by 42, which is also an F1, and the ATACR 1 to 8 are all built in the United States. You see our country of origin statement on the bottom.
Right. I know you've kind of standardized that. So.
Yeah. The federal government gave us some guidance about how to appropriately mark these, and so it says developed, assembled, and verified in the USA. What that really means is that somebody from the factory in Idaho put it all together with the parts that we may have sourced from a vendor in some part of the world. There's some parts that are hard to get here in the U.S., but otherwise it is from here, built by us.
Very cool. And then is that little NXS and those little comp, because you used to have a 1 to 4 and then 2.5 to 10 by 24.
Yeah.
That's the only other one outside of the ATACR.
And the comp 4.5 by 24
The
service
little comp
rifle
guy.
scope.
Yep.
Yeah, the biggest thing in the optics world is it's so hard to, there's not the vast U.S. manufacturing capability that a lot of people might think. I mean, the U.S. is the greatest country in the world from manufacturing and all these capabilities and science and technology. Like, we can do an incredible amount, but cost-wise and capability, like it is a global market, and so a lot of this stuff is offshore. And it's not that it's a problem or a bad thing. It's the reality of a global economy, and we basically we go where we need to go to get the quality.
Right.
And we see it as it's our approach, and really any company's approach to demanding quality, and what are you willing to maintain and deliver and accept or not accept. And we'll go where we
and your end result speaks for it, really.
Yep. It's a lot of work, and it's volume too. If we only want to make 10 of anything, we could probably do that. But we have more than 10 customers out there, and we want to make more and more. So we've got to go where we can get what we need to get.
No, I get it, but I appreciate that little aspect of it as well, because that's fading even more as we go on here. And then ones that weren't present, basically the Benchrest and the comp. So 8 to 32, 12 to 42, the old BR, which is still a killer value and still a very reliable scope.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the line that we used for a long time was that the Benchrest family has won more 1,000-yard championships than basically anything ever, which
probably still true.
Makes sense. It was the first scope that could really take it, not need some extra futzing with it to make it work right.
Take it apart and glue it back together and do some crazy stuff
right.
with it.
Yeah. I've never seen frozen turrets on Nightforce scopes.
Right.
So
that's the first scope that I owned that I'm like, oh, I dial it this far, and that's how far it goes. Look at that.
It worked.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you don't really need the correction factor on the turrets on them, but no, just right up the road at the old 1,000-yard World Open. I mean, if you've been around the company for a while, which I know you've seen some of the old catalogs. I mean, we used to put the groups, the group size, the world record group size on the cover of the catalog. It's like, hey, these things can do it.
Yep, I had one of those. My world record didn't last that long, but it worked.
You get you another one, we'll put it up.
Hopefully, it lasts longer this time.
Yeah.
So then with the Benchrest, then you've got the 15 to 55 comp and 3 reticles, right? 4 reticles.
Yep. So we've got the FCR1, which is very much the most popular because of its F-class heritage. We've got a simple crosshair with a dot, and a dual dot version. Some of these are going to be varmint shooter appropriate. Right. If you're shooting in broad daylight and you're not too worried about illumination and other things, that would be a good choice. But otherwise, Benchrest and F-class are where those find their home the most.
Right, and they've been out for 10 years.
In their current form since 2014.
Yep. And when they added the zero stop and the proper reticle that they should have done in 2013. Then they're still very popular in that realm.
Yeah, as we film this, the USF class team and the rest of the international contingents are in South Africa shooting with them. I mean,
nice.
We know, I think some of the South Africans, Australians also using them, as well as other individuals. So
nice.
Still very much at play in that community. And then, that last little service rifle scope. I mean, for us, competitive shooting, the military stuff is important. The law enforcement business is important to us, but the competitive shooting heritage is also important. We've been talking about it for all these years we've been involved in it, but like that service rifle scope really is kind of a
very limited use, but
very limited, but it's for a very narrow game, and the best in the game came to us. Said, hey, can you make something that fits? And we did it. So it's still very important to us that at the end of the day, all these products are made to help people perform.
Well, I think we covered everything there. A few things talking with the guys today. I wanted to go over and have you guys explain, or some, I guess we'll call it FAQs, but maybe it's some issues that people think are issues, but they're not really issues. Maybe explain why they exist. And I would say the biggest one that we hear about is people hate that rotating ocular for some reason. And I've kind of always seen it as the original throw lever before there was a throw lever. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. It's about design priority, it's an interesting thing to think about because it's not always explained, like why you did it that way. Some people think
that's why we're doing it now.
Possibly arbitrary or something like that. Couldn't do it any better. But it launched with the NXS when we were ruggedizing that design so that people could do things that they hadn't done with rifle scopes very successfully. We wanted to be able to have more thread engagement so it could be more waterproof. The eyepiece also happens to be the most vulnerable part of the scope physically, so it's more impact resistant because of it. And altogether, it just makes a more durable package.
It's more robust in every aspect, really.
Exactly. Yeah. The requirements that some of our customers had led us to put this on some of the scopes would have the highest demands.
Jumping on airplanes, swimming on submarines, that kind of high demand. But like you said, from the original throw lever part, I mean, while we have some people that don't like it, we also still have people that do like it. The cattails, throw levers, whatever you want to call them, these kind of a lot of them are now becoming integrated.
Right.
But that being said, if the entire eyepiece rotates, it's easy to grab.
It's the most gross motion you can get. Yeah.
Yep. You don't have to, when you're on the gun looking through it, you don't have to reach up and feel, okay, where am I turning the right part? Grab the eyepiece, low power, find your target, zoom in on it, shoot, come back down, find another target. So it has its fans as well as its those that don't care for it. But like on the NX8, we kind of went halfway. So we kept the locking diopter adjustment, but it has the independent mag ring, but with the power throw lever, kind of addresses that feeling for it concern.
Which you include. And you also, for the people that don't like the articulating ocular, you have the nice caps that
Yeah,
let you
the
re-index them
rotating.
quickly as well. Now
Comes
There
with
was-
branded Tenebrix covers that can be removed. They're super rugged.
so if you don't
We've
like
been very
that spinning
pleased.
around, you can just rip it off and put it back on.
Yeah, and generally that's like talk about competitive shooting. So that's part of my kind of going into a stage is taking that ocular eyepiece off. Just
Then you don't have to
even
worry
if it
about
was
it.
fixed,
Yeah.
even if it was fixed, it doesn't accidentally get closed
Yeah.
during the way.
Yeah.
So it just comes off, shoot the stage, come back on. When we're done, close it up, and you're good to go.
And there was one other consideration you wanted to make sure we mentioned about the locking diopter.
Oh yeah,
Lock ring on the rotating.
Yep. So the you have your front magnification ring here. Grab it, change your power, and then you have a locking ring for your diopter adjustment. So it's not fast focus,
Right.
kind of that European style. So the downside, I guess, if people were to complain, is if you were to break it loose. Say you set this ring kind of loose, or just
Right.
kind of put it
Right.
together. Depending how far you go in one direction, you could loosen that eyepiece
Mess up
barrel,
your
and so
diopter
now you're
focus.
changing your diopter, not
Right.
your magnification.
Right.
So,
So make sure you tighten your lock ring there.
exactly. So once you find your diopter, what we recommend is backing this lock ring into it, holding it in place,
Right.
and then loosening with your hand and kind of snapping them together,
Yep,
adding
gotcha.
a little more friction,
Yep.
make it a little bit tighter. And generally, when that happens, that problem goes away because again, you're just putting a little more contact on it. But the nice part is it's a set and forget. Once you set it, you lock
Right.
it in place,
Right.
and you don't have to touch it again.
Because there's
like-
the quick set deal. I mean, you can
Easy
bump.
enough.
Yeah.
Very very easy. Or if you were to kind of rotate your flip cap or something, you could accidentally bump
Yep.
that. So
Yep. Well, I think that covers that. The other thing that I've heard, actually, first the fully rotating ocular is only on the ATACRs.
in the
Right.
NXS.
And NX8. Oh, you're right. Sorry, NXS.
NXS and
And
XTACR.
yeah, sorry, and the
Yep.
original in the NXS. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. So then the other thing I've heard a lot is some of the scopes don't have yardage markers on the parallax, and some of them do. It looks like the ATACRs do have yardage.
Yep. They
NX8s, NXSs don't.
Correct.
Right.
Hash marks.
And
Yep. A gradiating, thicker hash
Right.
mark.
so there's still directionality indicated, but a lot of people can get bent out of shape sometimes on why are there no yardages on there. What's any
Because
thoughts on that?
on the flip side, when you put numbers and the yardages don't line up,
Then
they
they
get bent
don't-
out of
yeah,
shape
yeah.
too.
Right,
So
right.
it's a double-edged sword.
It
but
is, it is.
we tried it with the ATACRs. They're approximate.
Right.
With your parallax adjustment, environmental conditions, your diopter adjustment to your own eye. Some of those will create variation on where that exactly lines up. But and some of them, like our MOA scopes on the ATACR line, they're marked in yardage or yardages and then meters on
the mill scopes.
on the mills. At the end of the day, they're all approximate.
Right.
For the hash marks, like what I'll do is I'll take a paint pen, kind of figure out where my 100
100
yard
yard.
is,
That's a good-
put a
yeah.
1 or
Yep.
kind of pick a mid range, like a 4 or 500. So then I just have a quick dial to feature. But it was actually a pretty big internal debate on the NX8 of like, well, the NXS didn't have it, and this is replacing kind of the
Right.
NXS, but the ATACRs have it. But
Right.
but then at the time we're getting a lot of complaints that the yardages don't line exactly perfectly. I'm not saying it's like grossly off. It's like it's 200 instead of 100. It's like, well, I mean, you're talking about 1/16 of an inch worth of travel,
Right. And at that distance, it's still kind of a greater
your
magnitude.
condition. Yeah, like where I'm at in Georgia, it floats between 75 and 100 meters depending on summer or winter. Like it's just a known thing. So it's a catch-22 depending on what you decide to do. But probably the best advice would be on like the hashes. Take a paint pen, just
Right.
indicate a quick mark and kind of cover that. But ultimately, what you should be doing, regardless if it's marked, is properly checking for parallax removal. So kind of
Right.
nodding the head, making
Right.
sure you don't have that parallax in place, regardless of what's marked
Right.
on the turret.
No.
Kind of the numbers just get you started.
Right. And for you, I know it's going to be you're going into a stage, but you can't get in there and get set up, so you got to put it where you think it's going to be
Exactly. Or a
and
good
roll with
starting
it.
position,
So,
yeah.
Very cool. Anything else that you guys want to throw in that we didn't talk about?
I have something I do want to mention quick before we wrap up because in the meeting I thought it was pretty interesting. Can you kind of walk our listeners through qualities that you guys were talking about? You're talking about the scope thickness. You're talking about the way the glass is attached and all that kind of thing. Can you kind of walk everyone through what Nightforce is doing that you don't?
And
see
you
anyone
like their
else?
slogan too, right?
Yeah, and the slogan has a lot to it, and I know you guys like to talk about that. If you can unpack that also.
Well, we'll start with the slogan. So it's rugged, reliable, repeatable. It's been our mantra, our way of life, our focus of being for quite a few years now. Some permutation of that story is our story, as in, the scopes have to be rugged. They're going on guns, they're going on adventures, they're going on missions. They have to be able to withstand recoil and the abuse. They have to be, reliable. You got to be able to count on them and trust. As a competitive shooter, I want confidence in my gear. If I can't trust my gear, I'm not going to perform to the best that I can. And then repeatable is just doing it over and over again. So ultimately, we want a product that works, that you can count on anytime, anywhere in the world. When the conditions are worse, it's still going to perform. And that's what that rugged, reliable, repeatable is, telling that story in 3 simple words. And it drives everything we do. What from it's, looking at, do we have flip-up covers that are strong enough for the scope, to is the quality of the product, the feature set, deliver on that. We make our own accessories and mounts. Do they live up to that standard as well? And we always, we never lose sight of that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Right. We don't want to cut those corners or sacrifice in the material quality or the processes that we put into place, so that, again, you can trust that optic right out of the box. But to go into what we were talking about, some of the training with the staff here, a few things that we like to point out when somebody's looking at the scope. Ultimately, a rifle scope is replacing sights, or it is a sighting system. So, if you didn't have a scope, you'd have iron sights. A lot of people equate iron sights to being very reliable, very rugged. And so for us, what that means, while as an optics company, optics matter, the mechanics can't be overlooked. So we look at it as the optics are very important, but so are the mechanicals. And so, like, starting with the turrets, we've talked about, we test them and QC them, but we'll make these things are essentially micrometers. We're moving some internal components up and down or left and right, and that in turn makes those adjustments for our longer range shots. Well, we want it to be in a predictable manner, and we have to essentially make these things perfect. So we want to be able to, so at 2 clicks, 3 clicks up from your 0, you get exactly a quarter minute or tenth of a mil per click. To you spin this turret 3 times, you get that exact amount, and you still have that nice tactile click feel. You can, you still get that precise adjustment regardless of where you're at in the range. We do that through metals. There's not any plastic in these turrets, and as they come off the machine, we actually have people that literally hand fit these parts together. And as it goes together, there's no, this turret didn't work well, so let's try these other parts. It's like, nope, we'll start over, because they're that precisely fit together. So you can, I was kind of joking earlier, call it almost like a silky ratchet sound.
And there's no better description either.
So you just kind of work through, you get those nice solid clicks wherever you're at. You just kind of, you feel that's like, yep, that's a Nightforce. So that, the body tube itself, when you look at it, you hold a body tube by itself. Well, it's a hollow piece of aluminum. It feels very light, but on something like these ATACRs, it's 20-25% of the weight. Well, we've not always been equated with the most lightweight scope in the world, but when you're 2 to 3 times thicker at 25% of the weight of the scope, so a 30-ounce scope, that's 8 ounces, that's a fair amount of weight. But for us, this is that shell around the egg, and that thermal stability of